say and spell your first and last and organization.
So this is Dr. Carmen Black. We are very concerned about voting rights in the state of Connecticut, which we don't have. We have very few. We have very, very suppressed in the state of Connecticut. And we're here today to support legislation for HJ 5859. That's the early voting, and that's the no excuse absentee ballot voting. What do you think about that? Did you like mailing in your ballot? Or did you go in? Did you go, Christine?
So I'm from Georgia. I'm the land of Stacey Abrams, the land of the Black women marching to turn the state blue, getting stuff done.
So you were like horrified.
Oh, again, ever since I moved here, it's been like the Ku Klux time machine. I really don't understand what Connecticut is doing.
Right. Like, I don't either. Well, you know what they're doing? We're still in 1860. We're still saying that you can get 2.3 million registered voters through the polls in 14 hours.
Especially when they're condensed to an inner city.
Exactly. And then, you know what I've heard during these times is that people say, oh, you can go vote. I hear legislators say that all the time. We're not stopping it. But you can't vote if there's a 6-hour line. Okay? You can't vote if you have a sick child or sick family member that you have to take care of.
Or leave from your job.
Or leave your job. You can't vote if you have to do all those things. So they're suppressing people, and they know it. We're not 1865 anymore. It's 2021. There are a lot of people in the state of Connecticut, and it needs to be dealt with now. Thursday, House Speaker Ritter, we're asking you, we're demanding that you bring House Joint 5859 to the House floor and order a vote. We want to see where we stand in the state of Connecticut. Are we going to stand in the way of suppression? Or are we done? We're going to have an open and free and fair election.
We really don't want to be the state that makes Georgia look aggressive.
I mean, really?
Let's not.
You know?
Elaine isn't going to be able to make it.
Oh, okay.
Who's got her on the list?
No.
Elaine does.
Oh, Elaine. No. She wasn't supposed to speak. Come on down. So, yeah, this is Camden Action Now. We're actually going live on our pages. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. Elaine Dove cannot make it today. Just so you guys know. She is not available, but we thank you for her support in House House Joint 5859?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, she's doing her writing.
Good. Because you know what? 1865 is over. So, Matt Ritter, do your thing, buddy. Would you like to speak to him in action now? So, what are your thoughts on House Joint 5859?
Well, my input is from a non-resident, legal resident status, is that I feel it's so important now that immigrants who have legal residency, that it's so important that we kind of galvanize ourselves to get out to vote and to also use some of our economic powers. We have a spending power here in Connecticut, the immigrants, of almost $16 billion. And I think we need to put some of that to kind of urge or to kind of influence or lobby representatives, our elected representatives, to kind of help get us into the fray. And if there are any kind of bills or anything that's moving forward helping us in this pathway to citizenship, is to also help us out also. So that's why I'm doing that.
What are your thoughts about, permanent residents, citizen residents getting voting rights just on a local level?
I think it's crucially important that we do, and that there are a couple of states that that allows cities that allows individuals to vote on local elections, Board of Education, commissioners, things of such. I think that once again, we work, we pay taxes, we put a lot into the economic framework of the state, but we're invisible individuals because we do not have that right to vote.
Keep talking.
So that's why I feel it's crucially important that that we address this situation. I'm asking my immigrant support to be able to move forward with this agenda.
My car has a green dust.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you focus right here. Okay? Look at my hand, pretend like I'm over there. All right? Hold your pose, don't move, don't shake. Sorry, the sugar from my tea finally hit me, and I got to push it up. So that's my, all right, hold your pose, don't move. How do you put this around?
State Central, and she came to say a few words in support of House Joint 58 and 59. We are here not in really a partisan factor. We're here basically because our democracy is at stake in the state of Connecticut. We're extremely tired of operating in 1865, operating underneath the Constitution that says that we can only vote on the election day. We're very tired of operating under a Constitution that was signed by people who were owners of slaves at the time in the state of Connecticut. Slavery's over, it's 2021, and it's time for people to be able to vote early and absentee without any type of excuse, okay? We're gonna talk more about that later. So we're gonna hear from Jennifer Pope. She's amazing, and I know she's got a lot of really special things to say to support this bill.
Thank you, Rhonda. As Rhonda mentioned, I am the co-founder of the Hampton Progressive Action Network here in town, and I'm also the State Central Committee woman for the Democratic Party for the 11th Senate District. So thank you everybody for coming. I think we're here to talk about something that's common sense. It's something that we should have done a long time ago. We've been trying to do it for a while, and for some reason, we're facing all these hurdles. We're trying to get some basic things passed that pretty much every other state has already in place. Arkansas, you can vote early. Why not in Connecticut? Alaska, you can vote by absentee ballot. Why not in Connecticut? So these are things that are way past time for us to do. No one should need an excuse to vote by absentee. We should have automatic voter registration. It makes sense. We have systems in place for that to happen. We don't need to reinvent anything. Everybody else is already doing it. We just need to get on board. So I know we live in the land of steady habits and people don't like to make waves, but it's past time to do this. It's not a partisan issue. Democrats and Republicans should all agree. Everyone should have access to voting. And if we want people to participate and we want our voter participation numbers to be higher, we need to remove the roadblocks. And right now there are way too many, and it's past time. So thank you, and thanks for everybody coming out today to show your support for something that is just common sense.
Thank you so much, Jennifer Pope, for those awesome words. We agree with you. This is just simple common sense. You know, we have 2.3 registered voters in the state of Connecticut, and we are asking for them to get through the polls in 14 hours. If you just do that on your calculator, that doesn't even make numerical sense. You'd have to have everybody get through in less than a minute. That's not going to happen. All right. Next speaker we want to have to come up and support this legislation, House Joint 5859, is Pastor Kelsey Steele from Varick Memorial. He has been a steadfast supporter of this legislation. He has been continuing to fight for democracy and equality and justice in the state of Connecticut. And so we welcome him to the podium.
First of all, it's good to be here today. And we have to understand that those who have a white supremacy mentality are outraged and they want to suppress our vote. The content for voting rights of Black people and the rolling back of their rights is old as the dirt in Jim Crow's sandbox. But Connecticut must lead the way in protecting the right to vote. But Connecticut has a lot of work to do. Connecticut has some of the most restrictive voting laws outside of the South. We cannot be hypocritical and talk about Georgia when community of color in Connecticut routinely face long lines and other obstacles when voting. It's past time we correct these issues and ensure that voters of color and all voters are free from voter suppression and intimidation and have a fair and equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Recently, the Connecticut legislation held a public hearing on the Connecticut Voting Rights, Senate Bill 820, introduced by State Senator Matthew Lesser, which, if enacted, would make Connecticut a national leader in protecting the rights to vote for community of color and all voters. We have heard the cries from many civil rights leaders, voters, and advocates on just how important that would be when it comes to rooting out racial discrimination in voting, because our vote matters and our vote counts. By enshrining into law protections against voter suppression and voter delusion, expanding language assisted requirements, and taking strong action against voter intimidation. Connecticut should build on the success of other states that have enacted state voting right acts, such as California, Washington, Oregon, and just recently, Virginia. While these bills are crucial first steps, there is more work to be done. It's time to finally bring Connecticut in line with the 29 states across the country that offers no excuse absentee ballot voting and the 44 states that allow early voting. We can accomplish this by passing HJ 58 and HJ 59 constitutional amendments that would allow the voters to decide on being no excuse absentee ballot voting and early voting in Connecticut. No Connecticut residents should have to worry about taking time off from work, missing family obligations, or standing in lines long to exercise one of their most fundamental rights. To force residents to make that choice is an act of disenfranchisement in itself. This past year, Connecticut temporarily expanded absentee ballot voting, and the results speak for themselves. Connecticut held its smoothest election in years, with near-record voter participation despite a global pandemic. But if Connecticut fails to make these temporary reforms permanent this session, voters will lose these rights once again. Voter disenfranchisement will always be a painful part of our history, but Connecticut has an opportunity this session to ensure that it will no longer be a part of our future. And I say it once again, call the bill, call the bill, call the bill.
Call the bill. Call the bill. Thank you, Pastor Steele. We want everybody here today to get your phone number, call up Matt Ritter on Monday, tell him to call the bill. Thursday's the time to call the bill, and that's what we want him to do. We're going to have the next speaker that's going to come up is another warrior for democracy in the state of Connecticut, Mr. Sean Grace, who's the chair of the Hampton Democratic Town Committee. We want to hear from him because he has made a lot of strides just in his first year as the chair of our town committee.
Thank you, Rhonda. So about a year ago, we pretty much had an entirely new Democratic Town Committee because of activists like Rhonda and many of others that are here today. And it wasn't about power or anything like that. It was about making change. And when we came in, the very first resolution we passed was signing on to a letter with common cause, Taryn, urging Governor Lamont to allow no excuse absentee ballot voting during the pandemic, and he did. We weren't sure it was going to happen, and we didn't take anything for granted. It was activists that led the way to make sure we kept the pressure on our elected officials to make sure that that happened. And it is activism that is going to make sure that these bills pass out of the legislature this year. As has been noted, what the pandemic taught us was it works, right? We voted by mail and it worked. So what we would be doing now if we don't pass these laws is we will be rolling back the clock of progress. It's been noted that Connecticut is the land of steady habits. And, sometimes people say that like it's a good thing, but oftentimes those habits that are so steady are bad habits, right? So we need to turn the page, and we need to start developing some good habits, right? And one of the good habits that we have developed over the course of this pandemic, and with the activism and the activists you see here, is the habit of persistence. We're not going away, right? We're not going away until we get this job done. So make those calls, call your legislators, call them all across the state, make sure they know that we are watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean Grace. We are not going away. We are not going to continue to live in 1865. We are in 2021. You cannot get all 2.3 million people through the polls in 14 hours. You cannot continue to sit in your legislative seat and say that we have a free and fair election in the state of Connecticut, because we don't. You cannot continue to sit there and say that, oh, anybody could just roll into the polls. Nobody's stopping you. But you know who we're representing? We're representing, I'm here, Hamden Action Now is here to represent the 474,000 registered citizens, state citizens of the state of Connecticut that did not vote in the 2020 election. Hamden Action Now is here to represent the 20% of the registered voters in the state of Connecticut that did not come out to vote. It is not okay to have a state that sits back and says it's okay that only 80% of registered voters come out to the polls. It is not okay that nearly 500,000 registered voters are disenfranchised. Okay, maybe you can walk into the polls, but maybe not that mother with the child that's going through chemotherapy treatments. Maybe it's not easy for a family member who can't get to the polls because they can't sit in a line for 4 hours with an elderly or disabled relative or parent. Stop thinking about yourself. 474,000 people did not vote in November, and that is not okay. I am here to speak for them. And don't tell me about the people that, oh, they just don't come out because they just don't want to. Why would they not want to? They don't want to because they've spent their whole lives being disenfranchised by the system that was designed to disenfranchise them. It is enough. It is enough. The next speaker we have is Doris Dumas. She's the president of the Greater New Haven NAACP. She's had enough, and she's going to tell you why.
Good afternoon. I bring greetings on behalf of the Greater New Haven NAACP. And I also stand here for those who do not know how powerful their voice is. So we're going to make sure people know every vote counts, and we need everybody voting. Voting is the cornerstone of our democracy. Voting is the basic, fundamental right of each citizen. Despite the fact that African Americans and other racial and ethnic minority Americans were guaranteed the right to vote with the 15th Amendment, which was passed in 1870, states and local municipalities continue to use tactics such as poll taxes, literacy tests, and other outright intimidation to stop people from voting. It took the courage, sacrifice, marches, protests, blood, sweat, tears, and sadly, even deaths, as well as for the civil rights organization to organize, mobilize, and demand civil rights, voting rights for all people. The NAACP led that to Bloody Sunday, and many of you know your history, and if you don't, you need to look it up. And eventually, thanks to the civil rights champions like Congressman John Lewis, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and so many others, including women who were on the forefront, that led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Voting Rights Act aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote under the 15th Amendment in our Constitution. Yet, here we are, still talking about barriers, still fighting to remove barriers. Congressman Lewis often reminded us that the work was not completed. There are so many trying to turn back the clock. They are actively pushing and working to block votes and to put up additional barriers. So not only can we not allow that to happen on our watch, we cannot let that clock go back. We must keep working and demanding that the Voting Rights Act be fully restored. We must remove all barriers. We must have voting rights protection and make it easier for the residents in Connecticut to vote. We have to make sure we secure access to the ballot box for every citizen. Connecticut, we must take the lead. We must do the right thing. Connecticut, it's past time, and we need to correct these issues and ensure voters of color, and indeed all voters, are free from the suppression of intimidation and have a fair and equal opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. It is past time, Connecticut. We need to have Connecticut in line with the other 29 states, as you heard. And we must try to remove the barriers. In Connecticut, residents, we have barriers for the people who are on parole. We can't have that. We have to remove that. This is 2021. Come on, Connecticut. We're the only ones in the Northeast with that. We have to remove that. That's a barrier. Again, we need to take the lead. We need to do the right thing. We have to have more people participating in the process. We need voter access. We're going to remove the barriers to help ensure that every citizen can easily access their basic fundamental right to vote. Connecticut has the opportunity this legislative session. We don't want no long drawn out session. We don't want it to have to come back and go back into session. The time is now. It's on our watch. The time is now. Do the right thing, Connecticut. Let's get this passed. Let's do it this week. It's time. Every citizen has a right, and every citizen should not have to have barriers put up. Let's make it easier. Early voting, absentee ballots. It worked. We saw what happened in 2020. We know that it can work. We, the NAACP, we've been fighting this fight for way too long, more than decades. I mean, we're talking a century already. It's time. The time is now. Connecticut, take the lead. Let's get it passed this week.
Thank you, Doris, and I agree with you. You know, when you have a state that says that they take away people's civil rights when they enter prison, you have a state that says even after they're on parole, their civil rights are still taken away. And I continue to say this, well, even if you want to say that they don't deserve, they should be punished by not being able to vote. The only people you're punishing, not only you're punishing them, you're punishing their families, their communities. When you go into prison, you're still a citizen of the United States of America. All right, I'm gonna say that again. Just because you happen to be living in that building in Uncasville, your citizenship doesn't punch out. You don't punch out. They have to say, oh, time out. You don't get to be a citizen now. We'll time you back in when we say it's ready. The Constitution doesn't say that. The Constitution says if you're born on this soil, you have that right. And if you're naturalized, you get that right. So don't you dare continue to tell me that I have to, I think that they should continue to be punished. That is just a way to control and manipulate the power in the state of Connecticut. It's gone on long enough. When Black people and brown people and indigenous people rejoin the community after doing their time and they pay their debt to society, they should be able to return with full rights. And they shouldn't apply for them. They shouldn't ask for it. They shouldn't have to call up the Secretary of State, go with hat in hand. Oh, please, Secretary of State, can I vote again? No. You got that right when you were born in this country. And we need to continue to stand up and stop allowing it to happen. We stand Hamden Action Now. Today we stand again on behalf of the 474,000 people that were registered to vote in 2020 and did not. We stand on behalf of those that are on parole who are not even having their rights restored. We stand on behalf of the families of those that are in the military that can't get their ballots in a timely fashion. We stand on behalf of those who are paraplegic and quadriplegic and can't get to the polls and don't have support to get their ballots in. They are disenfranchised on a regular basis, and it needs to stop now. Now, I'm not too sure. The next person up is Judy Layman. Judy, are you here? All right, Judy, we're gonna have you go to the podium and tell us exactly why you've had enough.
My name is Judy Layman.
A little closer, Judy.
My name is Judy Layman. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Connecticut, and I'm the VP for Advocacy. And the League has been working on this issue of no excuse absentee voting since 2007. We came very close in 2014, but didn't get past then. And our people said then, in 2014, if we fail to remove restrictive wording from the Constitution, we're confined to voting practices that date back to the 1800s. And those practices do not meet the needs of today's voters. Well, nothing could be more true than that, again, today, 7 years later in 2021. So yes, we, the League, is very much on board with advocating for the resolutions HJ 58 on no excuse absentee voting and HJ 59 on early voting. You might be interested to know that almost 50% of the voters in the South, in the southern United States, voted by early voting in the 2020 election. And we don't have it here in Connecticut, and that's a shame. It needs to stop. I'm also here just to remind us all that the people's votes who matter the most in the next week are the people sitting in the House chamber and the Senate chamber in Hartford, or in their house in front of Zoom. There are 36 senators and 151 House members. 3/4 of them need to pass the absentee voting bill in order for us to get a chance to vote on it. So that means 27 senators and 113 House members. I hope my math is correct there. So we need to be reaching out to our friends and family who live in districts where the legislators may be on the fence about these issues. In North Haven, in Wallingford, in East Haven, West Haven, Orange. Let's extend our reach and reach out to our friends and family and get them to write their representatives. Hearing from the constituents from their districts is the most powerful motivator for them to vote. So let's keep up the pressure. And Rhonda, I wanted to thank you for talking about the 474,000 people who didn't vote. I was shocked to see that only 50% of the people in New London, for example, voted. That South Windsor had 88% people who voted in 2020, but only 65% in East Windsor. What's that all about? Yeah, so we need to get people interested in voting, develop that habit, and feel included in the process, election after election, year after year.
Thank you so much, Judy. I just also wanted to say that out of that 474,000, that represented 20% of the registered voters in the state of Connecticut. We should be marching down our state capitol on a daily basis, and we should have millions of people marching down the state capitol, demanding that this be changed. I mean, what kind of democracy do we live in where it is okay that 500,000 registered voters don't vote? And you have people sitting in positions of authority all over the state who are like, oh, maybe they just don't want to vote, or maybe they just don't care, or maybe they're too busy. I mean, what kind of democracy is that, where you just can say, oh, shoot, 500,000 people didn't vote. Oh, well, maybe they'll come out next year. We are determined. Listen, Hampton Action Now is going to we're putting together right now a statewide coalition. We're going to knock every one of those 474,000 doors. And we're going to find out why the hell you're not coming to the polls. We want to know what your barriers are. Because you know what, people? Them 474,000 people can swing an election. They can swing a governor's election. They can swing a lieutenant governor. Listen, We know why nobody's concerned why they're coming to the polls. We're not fooled. We're not easily fooled anymore. You're going to tell me why you didn't come to those polls. I want to know. The next person we have is the warrior for social and economic and equity and justice in the state of Connecticut. Her name is Robin Porter, Representative Robin Porter. She represents the 94th district of this great state of Connecticut. And it's almost great, it's getting ready to be greater when we get rid of all this voter suppression. She continues to not stand back, she stands up. She continues to speak up. She continues to be beat down for her beliefs, but she continues to represent these 474,000 people even though they didn't come to the polls. She represents all of us, but she makes sure to let you know that those 474,000 people, that mother with the child, the friend I know, who has a child going through chemo treatments that can't get to the polls, you represent her. And she thanks you. She thanks you. We all thank you for your representation.
Thank you, Robin.
Representative Robin Porter.
And thank you all for being out here today. You know, so much has been said, but what I will say, and I'll keep it brief because it's all been said. You know we in bad shape when Georgia doing better than us. When they rolling back on their voter laws, right? And we're not even there. We don't have no excuse absentee voting, right? We can't do early voting. Georgia just rolled it back to 19 days. I'm like, damn, can we get 9 of them? Can we get 10 of them? Okay, maybe I'll settle for 5. But when Georgia is doing better than Connecticut, we got a problem. Connecticut, we have a problem. Them 474,000 people, I was just telling my group over here, imagine that. 474,000 people come out to vote in this state. You take money out of politics. You know what that's called? People power. People power. And I want the people in this state to know what it means, because the vote is the end result. We got to educate folks. They need to understand why it's important that they are voting for the people who will go to Hartford and be an authentic voice for them. The people closest to the problems are closest to the solutions, but furthest from the table. And I'm talking about the bargaining table, y'all. Ain't a whole lot of folks at the table that look like me. But when we think about who is being suppressed, who has historically been marginalized and criminalized, these are the people that we're saying you don't have your natural born citizen right to vote. The devil is a liar. The devil is a liar. And we are out here today to say that it's going to stop. We're going to turn this clock around and we're going to get it right. We're constantly doing things, but we need to do it right. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm tired of the talking. It's time to walk it. It's time to be about it. And frankly, I can't believe what they're saying because I see what they're doing. And it's time for us to do something different in this state. It's time for us to be about our business. And our business are the people and the citizens that are registered in the state to vote. And if they ain't registered, our business is to get them registered. Our business is to educate them. And they say you can bring them to the water, but you can't make them drink it. I think we can. I think they thirsty. I think they want to drink it, right? Let's help one another. Every person you talk to, you need to be having this conversation with every single day. Not a day should pass where you're not having a conversation with someone, grocery store, doctor's office, work, I don't know, park. That's coming because you know I ain't gonna leave that out. But you must have these communications with people. People are working 2 and 3 and 4 jobs to make ends meet. They're not at the polls because a lot of them can't get to the polls. So why should I need an excuse to file an absentee ballot? I shouldn't. Why shouldn't I be able to vote early? It's my vote. Shouldn't I be able to do it when I want to do it, how I want to do it? Ain't that what freedom is? Ain't that what freedom sounds like and looks like? But I tell you why the pushback is here. Because it did work during this pandemic. We know it works, right? You want to talk about data? Well, damn, you got the data. Now what you gonna do with it? For anybody that's sitting in the General Assembly on the fence on this one, I question your authenticity and the genuineness of your seat. Because if you really believe you got there because the people wanted you there, then you should be doing everything you can do to make sure that every single person in this state has the opportunity to vote for you. And if it ain't you, vote for who they want to vote for. Because that's the freedom of voting. So let's make sure we get it done. And let's make sure we call our legislators, every single one, not just the one that represents you. Because me and Senator Cabrera is on board. Me and Senator Winfield and Representative Ward, we on board, right? But we know who we need to call them. And if you're not in their district, find somebody that's in their district, because a constituent will move a legislator a lot quicker than a non-constituent. Let's just be real. So we need to find constituencies. We need to reach out to people, knock on doors, make phone calls. Look, do this, show up at the grocery store doing this. Yes. Right? The one thing the pandemic has taught me, and this is going to be my new mantra, I got so many, but I'm adding another one, right? Si se puede. Yes, we can. And meet me in the streets. Meet me in these streets, because this is where it's at. And if you think they're not getting ready to try to stop us from protesting, I got another thing coming. Let's look at what Florida just did. Now is the time to be in these streets, boots on the ground, making our voices heard. And I don't mean once a week or once a month. I mean every single day, because that is the crossroads we're at right now. And some things are not going to be given to us. All right? They don't give power away. You have to take power. And we're going to have to take it by force if that's what we want. The time for playing nice is over, because they ain't been playing nice. And I'm not about doing this incrementally, because they didn't do it incrementally. No, they did not. So now we're going to undo it increments? Nah, that don't make a lot of sense. That don't make a lot of sense. We're going to do it. And we're going to make sure we get it done. And anybody that is a part of the resistance that's fighting us on this has got to go. That's right. They got to go. My sister Doris said your seat is not safe. And that's a fact. Because we're going to make sure we educate our people and we get them to the polls, because they thirsty and they want to drink the water. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless you, and I love you. Thank you, Representative Porter. We thank you so much for your service. I just wanted to say one thing that you definitely touched on. I want to actually agree with you. Listen, I can march up and down these streets in Hampton and Dixwell, and I can tie up traffic all over. I can tie up traffic out there on the Parkway. I can get 1,000 people here to protest police brutality and chokeholds and everything else. But let me tell you what will end and bring police accountability in the state of Connecticut: that ballot. That ballot will bring, the ballot is what brings the police accountability. The ballot is what will give you a fair tax structure in the state of Connecticut. That ballot, the power of that piece of paper and your voice. I plan on, and like I said, Hampton Action Now and its coalition will be going statewide, and we will be doing sit-ins. We go in 1960 style. We're going to educate this state. All those people that didn't vote, especially, you know the ones I want? I want them folks that say that their vote doesn't matter and they can't be bothered. I want them. You tell them, please tell me where they live so I can go talk to them. I'm going to tell them exactly how much it matters. I'm going to tell them how much money they invest in their public school system, but they get no voice. The kids that their children that they send to these schools, they get no voice. I'm going to talk to every single last one of them. Our coalition, we're going to knock down these doors. We are going to knock and talk. We're going to have sit-ins. We're going to talk about this thing. You can't get much done unless you get to that ballot. Now we can march. Don't tell me I can put on a good march any day of the week. But you know what? We need to get to marching to that ballot box. That's when a marching starts. I'm going to bring up the next person that I absolutely adore, is our wonderful George Cabrera. He represents the 17th Senate District of Hampton and the Valley. Yet another warrior. We are absolutely listen, all I have to do is text Senator Cabrera and say, listen, this is what we need to do. He gets right back. He'd be like, all right, Rhonda, we're down, I'm down. All right, listen.
I'll get it there. We all right? Listen, I'm telling you, where else in America can you text your state senator and have him get right back? Because that's the state senator that is for in part and like a part of the people. He's not untouchable. You know, you can't be a state senator and be like, oh, I'm a state senator. You can't be calling me on my cell phone. You can't be texting me. You got to go through my 5 assistants. No, we don't operate like that in the state of Connecticut. That day is done. It's not a coronation. We're done with the coronations. We're done with the legacy candidates. We want candidates that are for the people, voted to operate and represent the people. Senator Cabrera, thank you for representing the people.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for your leadership, for putting this together, Handling Action Now, and League of Women Voters, and my good colleague and friend, Robin Porter, the warrior for justice, who have had a great time up in Hartford. Thank you all for being here. You know, one of my earliest memories as a boy was going to the voting booth with my parents, and like so many of you, getting that sticker that said, I voted. And my mom and dad, sometimes I would put it on myself. It wasn't until I got older that I realized what they were doing. They were teaching me to value my freedoms. They were teaching me the value of voting and having a say on who represents us at the local level, at the state level, at the national level. And that's why it's so important to make voting easier, whether it's early voting or absentee ballot voting, because our kids are watching us. And there's nothing more profound than teaching our children the importance of voting every single election, and teaching them that they have a say in who represents them in Hartford and in Washington, D.C. And I represent over 100,000 people in 7 towns and cities across this district. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with folks who've run up to me or I've seen and said, George, I'm sorry, I was gonna come vote, but I got called in to do overtime and I couldn't make it, or my kid was late getting out of school, or soccer practice ran longer, or I had to take my mom to the doctor. All these things that get in the way. The fact is people are busy. It's not the way it was so many years ago. People are busy. And we need to make it easier for them to vote. And it works. The absentee ballot, Doris Dumas ballot works. Why do we know it works? Because we've all mentioned it and said it here today. We just did it in the middle of a pandemic. We just did it. Record voter turnout.
Yes, yes.
So we know we can do it. So let's do it. I see my friend and colleague, Matt Lesser here. Hey, Matt. Woohoo! Matt came all the way from Middletown. Great warrior. I'm sure you heard from him soon. I want to remind you all that this is a real battle. You know, we talk about what happened during Jim Crow and during the Civil Rights Movement, and those were important battles. But we really have those battles happening in a very different way again. You know, we don't have to look far to see what's happening. And I want to remind you that we stand on the shoulders of giants, men and women who came before us. Our leaders like Dr. King and Jesse Jackson and others, but so many others, unnamed, faceless human beings who sacrificed, who faced water hoses and German shepherds,
Yes.
who had to face literacy tests and poll taxes. Those are the shoulders on who we stand on. People who bled, and quite frankly, people who died for our right to vote.
That's right. That's right.
That's what this is about. This is about what kind of legacy are we going to honor? Honor their sacrifice, honor their struggle, honor the price they paid, and set a new standard in Connecticut to say, we're not going back, we're going forward in Connecticut.
That's right.
We're going to make it easier, it's safe, and we're not going to take no for an answer. You know, you've got me in your corner. I know Representative Porter, Senator Lesser was here today, is in your corner, but Rep. Porter said it perfectly. if the people that came before us can face water hoses and German shepherds,
Yes.
then we can send emails and make phone calls.
Thank you.
We can show up in your districts. We can have demonstrations like this. We can write letters to the editor, talk to our neighbors, talk to our friends, and let's get this done and keep moving Connecticut forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Cabrera. And we thank you for your encouragement, and we will take you up on that. Okay? Listen, we are absolutely not having it. It is, when we think about voting in that ballot, it is really a hiring document. Okay, when you go to a job interview, do you have to wait in line for 4 hours? Do you need to wait in line for 4 hours to get to tell them, oh, I'm gonna hire you? This is what we do when we set a ballot. A ballot is a document that says, I trust you. I trust you with my child. I trust you with my money. All right? I trust you. That document, that ballot is the highest form of trust you'll ever have next to a marriage certificate. Okay? You must understand it is sacred. You know, I mean, when I think about, I go and I roll back that video of Reverend Abernathy and John Lewis getting the dogs and getting beat in the head on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and shedding blood on that bridge for that ballot and for my Black face to show up at the polls without a poll tax, without threats of violence. We have to stand up for these 474,000 people. I want everybody to remember, go home and remember that number, 474,203 people. Stand up for them. Don't say, I'm good. I can walk out. I can take the day off. You know, I don't have to worry. I'll just take the whole day off. I'll just stand in line all day. I don't care. Think about that 474,000 people that pay taxes in the state of Connecticut and can't get representation because they cannot physically get there on election day. I mean, it's just overdue. I mean, you cannot tell me that John Lewis isn't rolling in his grave to hear that number, to know he shed blood for this. He was arrested more than 40 times for this one right. That we sit here and we take it so callously. Oh, we can just go ahead and take it. You know, I'm good. I don't vote. I'm not political. You pay taxes, all right? So you're political. Thank you. You pay taxes. You send your kids somewhere. You ride around on the state and municipal streets. You're political. Thank you. Senator Lesser, we want to thank you for your service. We thank you for your courage, and I'm going to tell you a reason why personally. I watched you in these public hearings. I watched you feel these questions, and you never backed down. You were another one of those people that stood firm. They tried so hard to take you out. Oh, they threw everything at you but the kitchen sink, and you stood. And we thank you. Hamden Action Now, Black and Brown United, all the people, the Common Cause Connecticut, Barrett Memorial, we all thank you so much for your service. The 474,000 people, they thank you too, because we know that change is on the way, and we know you lead in that way. So we thank you so much. We're going to invite you to come to the podium and say a few words in support of HJ 5859.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hamden Action Now. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, Common Cause, all of the groups that are here today. You know, a couple of years ago, I had the honor of being on a trip with some folks from Connecticut, and we went down to Alabama. We started in Montgomery. We went to Selma. We walked over the Edmund Pettus Bridge where John Lewis and so many other folks marched for the right to vote. We went to Birmingham where people died. We saw that there. The sad fact of the matter is that voter suppression isn't just a thing that happened 50 years ago in Alabama. It's something that happens in 2021 in Connecticut.
Yes.
It's something that Florida just passed a law just yesterday, suppressing the right to vote there. And we have so much work to do in this state to make sure that not just the state government, but town governments, 169 town governments, respect the rights of residents to vote.
Yes.
Two things we can do. We can allow early voting. We can not allow no excuse absentees. We can do all of that. But one thing we absolutely need to do is pass a Connecticut Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
So that no matter who the mayor is, who's on the council, that the right to vote in Bridgeport is the same as the right to vote in Bethel, is the same as the right to vote in Hamden.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what town you live in, that your right is respected and that we treat everyone in this state equal. There are too many people who have fought and died for our rights to go back now, and we should not allow the same tactics that they're using in Florida,
Yes.
in Georgia, in our state, in Connecticut. We got to set an example for the rest of the country, and we can do that by passing the State Voting Rights Act. And it is so nice to be with my friend Super Robin Porter and Senator George Cabrera in this beautiful town. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Senator Lesser. Again, thank you so much for your service. We really, again, I know you people probably don't know this, but I have another computer that runs when these public hearings are going on, and I just let it play in the background. And when we hear something ridiculous, we're all texting each other going, can you believe this? And we're like, go Senator Lesser, you get them.
Can I say, you mentioned the public hearings.
Yes.
My favorite thing that happened in that public hearing we had on the Voting Rights Act before it got out was when the senator from Wolcott, he asked, what do voting rights have to do with race?
Come on now.
That was the question that we got in a public hearing.
I know. I mean, I didn't even want to bring that up. But I mean, listen, I was trying to be nice, Senator Lesser. I mean, I have, the various representatives and senators talking about, well, what's the problem? I could just walk into the polls. Everybody can just walk into. I said, I was like, Lord have mercy on my soul. If I could go through this computer right now, I would. I'm trying to keep it respectable. And then when I get up there and get my turn to talk, everybody turns off their cameras and goes into hiding. Ooh, we go into hiding because I'm about to call y'all out. You're gonna get called out. Listen, Senator Lesser, I hear it, we done heard it all. It's just not safe. If we have how are the ballot boxes? Do we have somebody standing guard in the ballot boxes? Listen, it's time to stop operating in 1865. That Constitution of the Connecticut Constitution was signed in 1865 by owners of slaves, and there ain't no more slaves in Connecticut. Slaves are done, and so is voting on election day. You cannot get 2.3 million people through the polls in 14 hours. It's not even, it does not even numerically correct. 474,203. Remember that number, because that's the people that they continue to disenfranchise with the big lie that we have a free and fair democracy in Connecticut, because that's what it is. We're going to bring up next Miss Eva Zimmerman. She is from, go ahead, give it up for her, y'all. Go ahead. You can have over there to the tall people's mic. She is the Child Care and Organizing Director for the SEIU Local 2001.
Thank you. SEIU has been dedicated for over 80 years to making sure that people have a voice, to making sure that CSEAers and workers throughout the state have an opportunity to go and vote and make sure that they get their voices heard. I've been proud to support and making sure that organizations like Common Cause, organizations like Hand in Action Now has an opportunity to reassure voters of people of color that you are valid, that you are counted in this process. At 12 years old, and I see little young ones, I started door knocking for people's right. And this is what we're trying to still, I'm over my 30-year mark here. We're still trying to advocate for the same thing. Why are we still saying and echoing time and time again that change is needed, but it's not heard? We had a lovely speech from the president, but where was voting rights in that speech? Where was the change that we so need here in Connecticut in that speech? So thank you for having the opportunity to vocalize this change and not stopping the fight, because workers need it, families need it, and people of color are suffering. And honestly, the only way we can do that is by changing the demographics when it comes to voting. That is a challenge we have now that can change literally the perspective of everyone's life. So let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva. And we thank you for your work, and we thank you for your steadfast support of having an open democracy in the state of Connecticut. Now, I just want to say one last thing. She just hit it again. These things just keep popping in my head. Again, you can't continue to say that, oh, we're just okay. I mean, like, and media, I'm talking to y'all too. Everybody put out in the papers in November, we had record-breaking turnout at the polls in the middle of a pandemic. You only had 28,000 more people. That's not record-breaking. Record-breaking is those 474,203 people. That's record-breaking. You'd had 99% participation. That's record-breaking. We have to stop feeding and adding fuel to the false narrative that we are this really blue state. And listen, it is not so. We have so many pockets in Connecticut of abject poverty. We have so many schools that have the school to prison pipeline rolling. The pipeline is just rolling. We have cops in schools. We're standing in a town with probably the top 10 highest mill rate in the state. Why isn't everybody mad? Why isn't everybody standing up and marching? We need to march. This ballot, again, is a hiring document. If you don't follow the directions that the people who hire you tell you to do, you get up out of that seat. We'll put somebody else there that will do the things that we ask them to do. We need accountability. We need accountability in governing. We need accountability in our police. We need accountability across the board. We cannot continue to operate in this manner. This has to stop, and it stops next Thursday. Like Pastor Kelsey Steele said, you call that bill on Thursday. All right. Speaker Ritter, we're telling you right now, we're demanding you call that bill next Thursday. And when that bill gets passed next Thursday, we will put a statewide campaign together on that referendum question, ready for 2022. If we got to knock down every damn 2.3 million of these voters' doors, we will do it. We will not have any language that you have to be a Harvard law scholar to figure out. You got 2.2 seconds to get through the polls. You don't have time to be like, oh, let me see, I don't know. Well, I pick yes, I want to, no, I'm not even gonna answer the question. We're not having that. We're not gonna hide behind this really ridiculous language and then say, oh, the voters didn't want it. We tried in 2014, but the voters didn't want it. That's very disingenuous and that's a lie, y'all know it. So step one starts on Thursday, House Joint 5859. Call up everybody you know. Tell them, call their state rep, call their state senator. I already texted all mine. I said, listen, you all know what you need to do. I've already started texting people from Stanford all the way up to Hartford. Just please listen, call the bill, House Speaker Ritter. It's time. All right, this is step one. And we all need to stay tuned for step two, because step two's coming. We believe step one will be passed next Thursday. Thank you so much for coming out today. We appreciate everybody's time and we appreciate your service. And we thank you for having an open and fair democracy in the state of Connecticut. Woohoo! And now we will take singing requests. Now, anybody be singing? Karaoke hour begins.
Take care. All right, sir. Ron, I got jet.
mic stand. Is this off? Is it in broadcast?
No, I stopped.
Good.